I was sitting on the couch when my 15-year-old daughter smiled at her phone. I didn't know homework could be so charming, I said with a grin. Suddenly, she stormed into her room. I have a boyfriend, okay, Dad? Are you happy now? I took a deep breath. When do I get to meet him? The door flew open. You can't meet him yet. Please, Dad. Not until I turn 16, then I'll explain everything. Bristol, if someone's threatening you or... No one's threatening me. Why do you have to make everything so weird? Before I could respond, my phone rang. My son Jacob calling from the University of Michigan. Hey, buddy, is Bristol dating someone? His voice was strained and urgent, like something was seriously wrong. Dad, listen to me very carefully. Do not investigate this. Give her until her birthday. Jacob, you're scaring me. Is my daughter in danger? No, nothing like that. Just trust her, okay? 2 weeks passed and I tried to respect Bristol's privacy until the most insane thing happened. She started doing her own laundry twice a week. This was the same teenager who refused to learn how to use a vacuum. I was emptying Bristol's hamper when I found this oversized University of Michigan hoodie. Jacob's school. When she got home from school, I held it up casually. This yours? Her face went red. Oh yeah, it's my boyfriend. Thrift store. It's a boyfriend-style hoodie from a thrift store. She grabbed it from me and hurried to her room. That night, I walked past Bristol's room around 2 a.m. to get water and heard her on the phone, voice muffled but urgent. I know, but I can't keep doing this. The lying is killing me. A pause. My dad will kill us when he finds out who you are. You know he will. The next morning, Bristol came down the next morning wearing a turtleneck in the summer. New fashion choice? I asked. Just trying something different. But when she reached for orange juice, the turtleneck shifted and I saw her frantically adjust it to cover it. She saw me looking and practically ran back to her room. I decided to wait until Mother's Day to confront them. We always visited his mom's grave together. Sorry, Dad. I have a huge project due on Monday. It's Mother's Day, Jacob. I know. I'm sorry. An hour later, Bristol announced she couldn't come either because she was sleeping over at Ashley's. When I called Ashley's mom to confirm, she sounded confused, but said yes, Bristol could come over. The pattern became undeniable after that. Every time Jacob mentioned coming home, Bristol had plans. Every time she wasn't home, he was too busy to call. That night, I confronted her gently. Before I could get a word out, she screamed, "Why can't you just trust me?" She stormed off. But the worst part was 2 days later. Bristol came home with her hair chopped short. Her beautiful long hair she'd been lathering with castor oil since middle school. My boyfriend likes it better this way, she said, running her fingers through it self-consciously. The college savings withdrawals were the final straw. $300 transferred to her checking account, and all the charges showed up near Jacob's campus. When I asked, she claimed it was for SAT prep, but couldn't look me in the eye. That's how I spent Mother's Day driving to Michigan. Jacob's apartment was off campus. I knocked, my heart pounding. Jacob opened the door, and his face went white. Dad, we need to talk about Bristol. That's when I heard her voice from inside. Is that the pizza? Standing behind him was Bristol in a slinky bathrobe barely covering her body and messy makeup. We all stood there in silence. Dad, Jacob started. Remember, this is legal. Bristol isn't your biological daughter, Jacob said quietly. She's your wife's daughter. We're not related by blood. We're step-siblings. I stared at him in shock. Jacob, she's 15. You're a sophomore in college. We fell in love, Bristol said through tears. We couldn't fight it, plus I'm 16 soon. I stopped listening after that and swung my fist at my own son, knocking him to the ground. My knuckles hurt bad, and I just stood there watching Jacob grab his nose while blood ran between his fingers. Bristol screamed something at me and rushed over to help him up, trying to hold her robe closed with one hand. I saw the blood dripping onto the carpet, and my brain finally caught up with what I'd just done to my own kid. My whole body started shaking, and I backed out of the doorway into the hall, almost tripping over my own feet. Jacob yelled that he was calling the cops, but Bristol grabbed his arm and begged him not to, saying it would make everything worse for everyone. I told them both this wasn't over, and turned around to leave before I did something else stupid. The walk to my car felt like a dream, and I fumbled with my keys 3 times before getting the door open. Driving home, my hands wouldn't stop shaking on the wheel, and I kept seeing Bristol in that tiny robe standing behind my son. I had to pull over at a gas station to throw up in the parking lot, then again at a rest stop 20 minutes later when the image hit me again. My phone kept buzzing, and when I finally looked at it at a red light, there were 17 missed calls from Bristol. I turned it off and kept driving. When I got home, I just sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside. The house was dark and empty, and I dropped onto the couch without turning on any lights. I couldn't sleep at all that night, just sat there staring at nothing and trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to drive back and drag her home, but I knew that would probably get me arrested after what I'd already done. Around 4 in the morning, I realized I needed help from people who knew how to handle this kind of thing. Monday morning came, and I called Child Protective Services right at 8 when they opened. The woman who answered sounded tired until I explained my college son was involved with my 15-year-old stepdaughter. Then her voice got serious real fast. She asked a bunch of questions and scheduled someone to come to my house later in the week. 2 days crawled by before Wednesday when Paige Moreau showed up at my door, carrying a thick folder and wearing a serious look on her face. She sat at my kitchen table and explained they'd need to talk to Bristol at the school without me there, investigate Jacob and make some kind of safety plan. I handed her everything I'd collected over the past few weeks, including the bank statements and the Michigan hoodie. That evening after she left, I sat at my computer for hours, making a timeline of everything I'd noticed going back months. The money transfers to Bristol's account, finding the hoodie, hearing the late-night phone calls, everything went into a document. I took screenshots of bank records and saved text messages, putting it all in a folder on my desktop while my hands shook typing. Thursday night, my phone buzzed with a text from Jacob saying they were really in love, and I was overreacting about the age thing. He wrote that nothing sexual happened until recently, and begged me not to ruin his life over this. I didn't write back, but took a screenshot and added it to my evidence folder. Friday turned into a mess of phone calls trying to figure out who was supposed to handle this, since Jacob lived in a different county near campus. The campus police said it was our home county's problem, but our county said the university was involved, so it was complicated. I spent 3 hours on hold getting transferred between departments. I finally called Ashley's mom to check on all those sleepovers Bristol claimed to have. She went quiet when I explained why I was asking, then told me Bristol had only stayed over twice in the past 6 months. She sounded sick when she realized she'd been helping them without knowing it, and said she'd write down everything she remembered for the authorities. We both kept apologizing to each other, even though neither of us knew what was really happening. Monday morning, Paige called to say she'd be interviewing Bristol at the school that afternoon, and I couldn't be there for it. Standard protocol, she said, but it made my stomach hurt thinking about my daughter facing questions alone. I spent the whole day at work checking my phone every 5 minutes and getting nothing done. When Bristol got home, she slammed the front door so hard the pictures on the wall shook. She screamed that I was ruining her life and told them lies about Jacob being some kind of predator when they were in love. I tried to explain I was protecting her, but she ran to her room and locked the door. Around 7 that night, Paige called back and said there were concerning patterns in how Bristol answered questions about the relationship. She wouldn't give specifics, but said they'd need to do follow-up interviews and create a safety plan. Tuesday morning, I called around for lawyers and got an appointment with Ken Roberts for that afternoon. His office was in this old building downtown and smelled like leather and coffee. Ken was maybe 60 with gray hair and looked tired but listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and told me straight up I could face assault charges for punching Jacob. My hands started sweating when he explained Michigan law didn't care that Jacob was with my underage daughter. Assault was assault. But he also said we could file for a protective order to keep Jacob away from Bristol since she was a minor. The paperwork took 2 hours, and my hand cramped from writing the same information over and over. Ken made copies of everything and said he'd file it tomorrow morning. Wednesday he called to say the order was filed, but warned me to document everything and avoid any contact with Jacob. He said my punch could actually help Jacob's defense lawyer argue I was violent and unstable. That made me want to throw up, because I realized my anger might have given my son a way to avoid consequences. Ken told me to focus on protecting Bristol now and let the legal system handle Jacob. Thursday night I sat Bristol down and explained the new rules starting immediately. 7 p.m. curfew on the school nights, 8 on weekends, no phone after 9 and no going anywhere without telling me first. She jumped up and threw her plate at the wall where it shattered and food went everywhere. She screamed that I was worse than prison and she hated me more than anything in the world. The neighbors probably heard her yelling about how I was destroying her life over nothing. She ran to her room and slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the hallway wall. I cleaned up the broken plate and food while my hands shook, then sat at the kitchen table trying not to cry. Friday morning I found an email from Jacob in my inbox sent at 3 a.m. He wrote 4 pages about how their relationship started when Bristol visited campus for a prospective student weekend back in February. He claimed they tried to fight their feelings, but couldn't help falling in love over late-night talks about books and music. Reading his words about how special and mature she was made me realize this had been going on for months, while I had no idea. He kept saying it wasn't planned, and they both felt guilty about the secrecy, but knew I'd never understand. The more I read, the more I saw the pattern of a college kid manipulating his younger stepsister. Saturday, I forwarded everything to Paige and spent hours going through Jacob's email again, marking every red flag. The way he talked about waiting until she was older, keeping things secret for now, how nobody else would understand their connection. Classic grooming behavior from someone who knew exactly what he was doing. I printed everything and highlighted the worst parts where he coached her on lying to me. Sunday afternoon, I remembered we had a shared family cloud account from years ago and logged in to check. There were hundreds of messages between them going back to January, before that campus visit. Screenshots showed Jacob telling Bristol exactly what to say when I asked questions, how to delete messages, when to pretend she was at Ashley's. I copied everything onto a flash drive and made 3 backup copies to give to Paige and Ken. 2 weeks passed with Bristol barely speaking to me and following the rules only because she had no choice. Then Wednesday, she didn't come home from the school. I called the school, and they said she left at normal time. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I drove around checking her friends' houses, but nobody had seen her. By 6 p.m., I called the police and filed a missing person report. The officer asked about custody issues or family problems, and I had to explain about Jacob and the protection order. They put out an alert and started tracking her phone, which showed up at an address in Michigan near campus. My whole body went cold when I saw the location on the map. The officer said they'd contact local police for a welfare check, but it would take time. I sat in the police station for 3 hours drinking bad coffee and checking my phone every 30 seconds. Finally, around 10 p.m., an officer came out and said they found her at Jacob's apartment. She was safe, but insisted she went there voluntarily and wasn't being held against her will. Michigan police couldn't force her to leave since she wasn't in immediate danger, but they strongly encouraged her to come home. 2 officers brought her back around 1 a.m., and she wouldn't even look at me. She went straight to her room, but not before calling me a traitor and saying she'd never forgive me for sending cops after her like she was some runaway criminal. The next morning, the school counselor called, asking for an urgent meeting about Bristol's attendance and emotional state. She'd missed 8 days in the last month, and teachers reported she wasn't turning in work or participating in class. The counselor said Bristol showed clear signs of trauma, even though she insisted everything was fine, and she just wanted everyone to leave her alone. We scheduled an appointment with Abigail Morgan, who specialized in family crisis situations, for the following Monday. Came faster than I expected, and suddenly, it was Monday morning with Paige calling to tell me the prosecutor's office was taking over the criminal part. She said I needed to step back completely and let them handle everything from here while I focused on getting Bristol into therapy with Abigail. The whole system felt impossible to trust, but I signed the papers agreeing to their plan anyway. 3 days into this new arrangement, Bristol found out about Javier through some post on Instagram and came down to dinner already mad. She grabbed her plate and threw it straight at the wall, screaming that I turned everyone against Jacob, and when she turned 16 in 4 months, she'd file for emancipation. Food went everywhere, and she ran upstairs before I could say anything. I spent an hour cleaning pasta sauce off the wall while trying not to punch something myself. The next week, we had our first joint therapy session with Abigail, where I finally admitted I messed up by punching Jacob and trying to control everything afterward. Bristol's eyes went wide when I said I was wrong, and she actually agreed to work on not screaming at me if I worked on not being so controlling. Abigail wrote something down and called it a breakthrough, which felt weird since we were just agreeing to basic stuff. 2 weeks later, we had the protection order hearing where the judge extended it temporarily, while the prosecutors figured out what to charge Jacob with. Ken told me afterward that my assault case was reviewed for misdemeanor charges, which could mean fines or even jail time. Both cases moved through the courts slower than I could believe. A month passed before Bristol tried something stupid by taking a bus to campus, even though the safety plan said no contact at all. Campus security called me saying Jacob had reported her being there trying to find his new dorm, which at least showed he was taking the legal stuff seriously now. The officer said Bristol was in their office waiting for pickup and seemed upset, but not hurt. I drove the whole way there without music, just thinking about what to say, but when I got there, I didn't lecture her at all. The drive home was completely silent with her waiting for me to explode, but I just told her I was glad she was safe when we pulled into our driveway.